All right, gents, we're going to get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Alrighty, everyone, welcome. This is Top Terps for prospective students considering the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland for both the undergraduate and graduate programs that we have to offer. We're glad you're here this evening. My name is Brian Kempton, and I'm the Director of Career Services and Alumni Relations at the School of Public Policy. And my co-host this evening is Dr. Jennifer Littlefield. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, I'm Jennifer Littlefield. I'm Director of Undergraduate Studies in the School of Public Policy. I'm really excited to see all of you and to be here with you.
So what we're going to do is we have you for an hour and a half of your evening, and we're hoping to use it to the best of our ability this evening. And Jen and I could not be more excited to welcome back a fantastic squadron of top Terps here this evening, and we're going to get them to introduce themselves in just a second. But before that, kind of want to go over the format of the evening so everybody's aware about what we're going to do. We're going to spend roughly the first hour in sort of a round robin panel sort of format where we ask a series of questions, and any number of our panelists are going to respond to those questions for the benefit of the entire group. And if you have follow-ups and we don't get to them, please put them in the chat over there, and Jen and I will both be monitoring that, so we hopefully are able to guide the conversation based on what the group wants to hear. So thank you for your consideration of that. Also, please consider, if you're comfortable, turning on your cams so that we can see smiling faces as opposed to black boxes. Sometimes that makes presenting in this sort of virtual format a little bit easier and a little bit more comfortable for everybody. And I appreciate your consideration of that request. So with that being said, I'm actually going to get the 5 panelists that we have here now to introduce themselves quickly, and we'll get kicked off with our initial round robin panel portion of our session this evening. The final half an hour, I should have said earlier, is going to be breakout sessions based on your interest in either our undergraduate or our graduate programs. So if you have more specific detailed questions that you're really thinking you want to drill down on a little bit more, maybe you save those to the appropriate breakout room towards the end of the hour and a half. So with that being said, let's get started. And Serena, your middle center for me, why don't you go and get started with a quick introduction for yourself, and then Anjali will move to you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Serena Saunders. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Silver Spring, Maryland. I came to the University of Maryland as a undergrad, quickly declared a policy major. Dr. Littlefield was actually the first person I met in the major, and we just hit it off immediately. And I was like, this is the degree for me. These are my kind of people. So after I graduated in May 2020 with my Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy, I stayed on for an extra year. I did the BA and DP program, and I got my Master's in Public Policy in August of this year. So recent grad. I worked part-time through my grad program, and now I work full-time at the same organization. It's a nonprofit called Running Start. We train young women to run for office. So, really happy that my policy skills kind of prepared me for nonprofit work, and really excited to be here.
Thank you, Serena. Double Terp, I love it. Anjali?
Hi, everyone. I'm Anjali. I also use she, her pronouns. And I also got my bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Maryland in the BA MPP program. I got my bachelor's degree in government and politics. It was before the policy major or policy undergrad major was around, I think, in 2018. And then in 2019, I finished up my master's with a concentration in international security and economic policy. And currently I work at the Cadmus Consulting Group in Arlington, Virginia / at my house for the last 2 years, working on emergency management and disaster response policy.
Thanks, Anjali. I really appreciate it. And yes, you should come back for a PhD, so you're a triple Terp. And one of the reasons why Anjali is here this evening is that a lot, as it's the case with a lot of our alums, she just happened to be reaching out to me last week or the week before to submit a job for our current students to apply to. And we were like, you know what, this is a perfect example of an engaged alum. Let's bring her back in more than one way. So thank you for being here tonight. Raymond, you're up next.
Thank you. Raymond Naveau here. I use he, him pronouns, and I received my bachelor's in public policy in May 2020. I am a resident in Hyattsville, Maryland, which is just the town like right over from College Park. And I'm putting roots down because I love the university and the area so much. And I currently work at the National Housing Trust, which is based in Washington, D.C. It is a nonprofit that is focused on the creation and preservation of affordable housing all throughout the United States. And my work there specifically is working with coalitions both in Maryland and Pennsylvania on progressing a number of policy initiatives that are focused around housing, energy, and environment. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Thanks, Raymond. I appreciate that. And one thing he did not say was that while he was at the school, he was a very active member, student, senator, TA, vice president of the Social Policy Council, and now he's on our alumni board. So you go to Maryland, but we don't necessarily let you leave. You have to stay involved. So thanks, Raymond, for being back tonight. Speaking of being involved and recruiting back on campus, Elise, your turn.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jen. And good afternoon, everybody. I suppose it's evening at this point, so good evening. My name is Elise Johnson. I graduated from the School of Public Policy with a bachelor's degree in May 2019. I also earned a bachelor's degree in government and politics, so I was a dual degree at UMD. I was first exposed to the public policy degree through the College Park Scholars Public Leadership Program, where Dr. Littlefield was formerly the director of, and I jumped at the chance to join the major when it was offered. Now I am a senior research associate at the National Academy of Public Administration, which is a congressionally chartered independent nonprofit located here in DC, just 2 blocks north of the White House. And like Raymond, I'm also serving on the alumni board. So he and I, we can't get enough of the School of Public Policy.
Thanks, Elise. Thank you so much for being here. And also, Elise came back last week to help us celebrate our 40th anniversary over at the hotel, participated in the rainy yet fun celebration that we had that day when it was almost like a hurricane outside. So thank you for continuing to be involved. And Kevin, your turn, last but not least for now.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kevin Leary. I was a 2012 graduate of the School of Public Policy. I got my master's degree there, so I'm clearly the old man of this group. Since then, I have been working in Baltimore. I work for a nonprofit called the Fund for Educational Excellence. We support Baltimore City Public Schools in a number of ways. 2 that I oversee. So one is fundraising for Baltimore City Public Schools. And the second is a program called the Heart of the Schools, which is a year-round initiative to celebrate and support Baltimore City Public School principals. So those are 2 of the programs that I run since I've left the School of Public Policy. And as Jen said, I am a Notre Dame grad originally for undergrad. And Jennifer can just say whatever she wants about Notre Dame because her dogs, she went to University of Georgia and they are, I think they're #1 in the country right now. So everyone's looking up at them. So
Yeah.
Don't feed that, Kevin. That's everybody does know that.
Move on quickly. Move along. Move along.
All right. Well, Jen and I are going to sort of popcorn back and forth with questions. I'll go ahead and take the first one, and this is sort of a little bit of a difficult question, I think, but one that I think you guys could take in a number of different directions. And a little bit of a 30,000-foot level question. How would you describe the overall culture at the School of Public Policy at Maryland? You could talk about that in terms of sort of the academics. You could talk about that in terms of support networks. You could talk about that in terms of the collegiality you might have felt with your classmates, the support you may have felt with the faculty or staff there. I mean, if somebody coming into the school, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels, what could they expect to find as far as the culture at Maryland?
Maybe I'll start us off, and I'm sure, no doubt my fellow panelists will have more to say. But I would describe the community and the culture at the School of Public Policy as tight-knit, chock full of opportunities, and incredibly supportive. As I mentioned, I was a dual degree recipient, public policy and government and politics. And government and politics is over at the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences. It's an incredibly large college at UMD, where public policy, it's more of a smaller community where we're able to exchange ideas freely. I found a lot of like-minded classmates, but also some who held, different perspectives than I did. And the ability to learn from each other was unlike what I experienced in the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences. So I appreciated the community that I found at the School of Public Policy. My classmates, I found some of my closest friends in my classes, and I still keep in touch with many of them today. So that's what I really enjoyed, the tight-knit, supportive community where ideas can just flow.
I do want to pause just for a second and say Elise was not paid to make any of those comments. So thank you, Elise, for such a great opening.
It's 100% genuine.
Others?
I will add to that. Disclaimer, I was paid for what I'm about to say. So just know this, folks, but kidding. I totally agree. I think the vibe at UMD in the policy school was very friendly, very collaborative. One of the things that I really appreciated throughout my time at the school was how much both the faculty and the fellow students were looking out for each other. I got internships that I had through my time from other classmates, and I passed that on to other folks when I finished up my internships. I really think it was just a group of folks who were very idealistic, who wanted to do good in the world, and we're working together to try to figure out what that was going to be and how we were all going to get there. And I think one last thing is it really felt like folks were there to learn, not for grades. Like professors weren't focused on that, students weren't focused on that. We were really there to get the skills we needed to, like I said, go out and do some good afterward. So it was a really positive, collaborative place.
I think one other thing, kind of talking about the entire University of Maryland, one thing that I really do miss about like the college environment is that there are just so many people with so many different interests, both different academic interests, different social interests, that are really easily accessible. So like if you just want to join a new club, you can just go and join it. It's all within the same geographic area. It's really easy. And for the most part, I feel like whenever I joined a new club or took a new class or joined another program or anything, people were really welcoming. And so it was really easy to kind of put your foot in different arenas, especially in a time when you're really trying to figure out what you want to do. You can kind of experiment with different organizations and talk to so many different people. And I really appreciated that about University of Maryland, because I mean, it is a big school, and so that can be overwhelming, but I also think that means you just have like so many different opportunities to experiment and figure out what you really want to do.
I wasn't going to talk, but Kevin said something that struck me that I think triggered something I think is really important. And there are a lot of schools, agencies, anywhere where like there's a lot of competition between people who are working on the same initiatives, and I never experienced any sort of competitive spirit between students where students really did want other students to do well. And if a student, two students were going for the same opportunity and one got it and the other one didn't, it was very likely that the two of them like had an exchange of like congratulations and like still stayed connected. And I think that is really notable for a program like this. It's much different than anything else I've experienced.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to build on what everyone said. Like, I think it was a super collaborative experience. Like everybody had their own policy interests. Like I knew a guy who was really interested in like space policy, and like I was not, but like we could really like talk to each other and like learn about each other's interests. And like I think that that was really fun a lot of the time. Like that's not something that you hear like lobbied around about like undergraduate or graduate school, but it was like a lot of fun to like be in class with people who were like as passionate as you are about different things, and being able to learn with them and like from them was so fun for me. Like loved it.
Wonderful.
That's
Thank
so
you for all those
great.
answers. And Raymond, I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned the collaborative piece because that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jen, do you want to take us in a different direction or follow up?
No, let's build on that. I'm interested in some specific experiences that really shaped your perspective or shaped your experience, either class or an experience you had or both. What are some specific experiences you think you could share about SPP?
I can go. I think that for me, like, okay, one is not a policy class, but I do have to mention it. It's a history of labor class, and it just like really like blew my mind as far as like what history can be and like how you can factor it into like current policy. Like that was my tie to it, and that was so fun. Second, like this ethics class, like I think it was 203 with Littlefield. Yeah, I took it with Littlefield and then I TA'd for it, and like I think that there is something like so like challenging about talking about ethics, about real world situations. Like what would you do in this situation from a policy standpoint? And that really like challenged me. It really made me think about like, who am I as a person? What do I value? Like, how can I kind of, you know, push the needle on things that I care about in a way that like will appeal to other people and will actually like get them to care too. So I think that those two classes for me were like kind of eye-opening, and like I still kind of like take lessons from both of those in my daily life.
Thank you. Best TA ever. Go ahead. Who's next?
I think maybe a class that really kind of shaped my interests in my years, but also now in my professional career, was a policy statistics class. A lot of policy is, you know, the formulation of ideas, it's brainstorming, it's, you know, bouncing, you know, thoughts off of each other. But the data piece is also so important. You know, when you add data that's accurate and reliable, clear, you know, it can tell a powerful story. So I think in this policy statistics class, you know, I learned a new way to convey, you know, my thoughts and convey why a policy, you know, should be such and such. And I use a lot of what I learned in that class in my job. You know, right now I'm in this organization that does research for government agencies, and you know, we're looking at survey data, we're looking at census data, and you know, other statistics. So being able to convey a story for why, you know, something is so important, for why a program is effective, for maybe why it's not meeting its intended objectives, that's critical. So I appreciated that other dimension of how to think about policies through numbers.
Thank you. That's great. Anyone else want to chime in on this one? Kevin?
Yeah, so a course that has stuck with me, there's honestly lots of them, but one was, I don't even know exactly what it was called, but it was about negotiation. And I think one, it was a very practical course in how to negotiate well, but I think more broadly, and why it still sticks with me, is more the mindset of when you try to create something or reach an understanding with someone, that it's in everyone's best interest, including yourself, to make sure the other person wins as well as you, right? So it's a win-win deal. Like maybe it's embarrassing to think that I wasn't thinking that way before, but that is something that has stuck with me. And every project I get involved with now, that is part of the mindset I want to take to the challenge, is that I have interest coming into this, but I need to understand the other person's interests and make sure that they win at the end too.
Great. All right. Brian, you want to ask another question?
Sure. Speaking of your time when you were at Maryland, one of the things we often talk about in recruitment activities or at fairs when we had them, hopefully we'll have them again someday, is the school's location. And sometimes it's easy to take for granted that we're a school of public policy inside the Beltway, 8 miles from the White House, sort of in the heart of a lot of opportunity. And while this isn't specifically a career-based question, how do you think the fact that we're located where we are impacted your experience while you were at Maryland? And yes, you could think about it in terms of internships, but also I'm thinking about like guest speakers in the classroom or panels at the, I mean, like there's a lot of access that we have given where we're seated in College Park. How did that impact your experience when you were at Maryland?
I think it was very impactful. It allowed, one of the things that I remember this, hearing this from Dr. Littlefield as a student when I was a TA and presenting, to a class and on policy stuff, and her recommendation was to like always bring it back to make it local. And in College Park, we are located inside like the second most populated county within the state of Maryland, not that far from the capital of Maryland, also even closer to the capital of the country. And so you can have people working at all levels of government, all within, a 20-30 minute drive of the university. And what it means as the university continues to grow and be successful is that a lot of these folks will graduate and go work in these different places, and not just with, not just like public sector, but also some private and nonprofit, but all in the area. And now our pool of folks to, bring back in just keeps getting bigger. And so, as the school gets older, our network just expands. And I think that that is something very unique and a huge asset.
I was going to say something similar, Raymond. I really appreciated the faculty that we had at Maryland, specifically within the School of Public Policy. As Raymond was saying, we have access to all of these different levels of government, federal, state, and local, at our fingertips, whether it be Prince George's County, the state of Maryland, or the federal government here in DC. One of my favorite classes that I took in the public policy major was a women in leadership class. It was taught by Ann Kaiser, who's a delegate in the she's in the House of Delegates for the state of Maryland. I believe she's Montgomery County. And it was tremendous. We talked about, what's the role of women as being change agents in the field of public policy and government at all levels, talking about barriers that women have faced, to participation in, civic processes over the years. So she had her day job as being, the state delegate, and then she would come to College Park to teach the class that afternoon. So, just having that kind of access is really unmatched. Most universities can't be able to do all three levels of government. So my example is just a state level, but I'm sure there might be others where federal, public servants come back to teach too.
Yeah, and I think I second what both Raymond and Elise said. And I think another facet of like the location that we're at is that there's so many other universities and colleges in the area. And so I think like I can remember a few times when we collaborated with a similar class because a professor was colleagues with a professor at another university, I think like George Mason. And so we went there and we did presentations together, or just students. So like with, I had a fellowship / internship at START, which is the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism. And a lot of the students there were from other universities, and that kind of also like it helps you build your network and helps you kind of just meet new people, which is really important, and meet people who are studying different things, who have different perspectives, who you can collaborate with. And I think that's probably pretty unique to this area because we have just so many different universities and different policy programs and government programs and political science programs in the area. And I think that was definitely very useful and very helpful.
If I could add something that's maybe not academically related, being close to DC, it's a fun city. You could probably find something different to do every single weekend and you would never run out of ideas. So having that access on 2 metro lines to get into the city is great. So that really, expands the college experience. You're not limited to just your campus. Truly, you have the whole DC, Maryland, Virginia area at your fingertips.
And shameless plug, though, we are the only university with an undergraduate in public policy in the metro area. So anyone else want to jump in on that, or should I go on to the next question? Kevin, I see you.
Yeah, I was going to jump in really quickly and just going a little bit of a different direction with the answer, because I think what all the panelists said is true, and the location being close to DC is such a huge draw. And in truth, that is what drew me to the University of Maryland. I figured I was going to work on the Hill. I was going to get into policy, and that my wife got a job north of Baltimore. And so DC was out pretty, like, before I even started at Maryland, and I had to change paths, and it worked out like seamlessly to go into the nonprofit world. So I bring that up to say that DC is there, but there's a lot of other options within the school as well.
Including in Baltimore, which is an amazing city, and a lot of opportunity there as well. Yeah, great. So speaking of experiences, what experiences, maybe an internship or other type of experience, was critical to you finding your job when you were getting out with your degree?
I can go first since, I'm just joining. Hi, everybody. I'm Shanice Demiro. And I would say my capstone project was actually critical in, getting my start in public policy. The same company that I did my capstone project with was like my first entry-level job. And it was actually, to Kevin's point, in Baltimore City. So I was very, very much so well-versed in, in tracking like the Baltimore City, delegation in Annapolis, but then also the city government as well.
Can you introduce yourself real quick? I know you had a work conflict, had to come in a little late. Please introduce yourself. No, happy to have you. Thanks.
I'm also planning a panel. So, so that was what that obligation was about. So hi, everybody. I'm Shanice Demiro. I am the Vice President of the SBP Alumni Board. I graduated in 2015 from the School of Public Policy. I got a graduate degree in social policy was my focus. Right now, I'm at Prosperity Now as a state and local policy manager, and just some of my background, community organizing, the Annapolis state government, as well as working on the Hill as well.
Thank you so much. Who else wants to talk about their experience? And experience is important, Elise?
Well, I can maybe, I have a bit of a similar story to Shanice, but on the undergraduate side. So during my senior year, all public policy students have to complete a capstone project. And my capstone project was with my current employer, the National Academy of Public Administration. And in my small group of, I think there were 3 of us with 2 of my peers, we worked on this project, this research-based project for the organization. We looked at how data can improve program evaluation of intergovernmental grant programs. And we worked closely with the staff here. What's neat about my organization is that there's this fellowship of probably close to 950 experts in public administration. And as a senior in college, I actually had a lot of access to 3 fellows who worked closely with my project. So after that capstone semester ended, I kept in close touch with my client organization, and they had a job opening at the time when I was applying for jobs. So it worked out really well. And I'm now over 2.5 years into my job now. So I'm thrilled with where I ended up. And I credit that to the opportunity provided to me through the Capstone Project.
And then hired a few more policy terps since then.
Yes. Yeah.
Love
There's
it.
a whole terp team at my office.
A whole terp team now. Who else wants to join in on this question?
I can. So I got my bachelor's, and I took a course that focused on housing policy in fall of 2018. Kind of just was coincidental that that course in particular was doing housing policy, but I completely like fell into the topic. And the next year, the professor that taught it was teaching it again. His name is Michael Bodakin, and he was recently retired, was the president of the National Housing Trust, where I now work. I asked if I could be his TA for the fall 2019 semester, and he said no originally, and then came back like a month later and asked if I was still interested. And I really just like dove into that opportunity and learned as much as I could. And during the semester, I had asked if the trust, the National Housing Trust, might consider hiring me for an internship. And he said no. We don't do internships, but give me your resume. And he took my resume. We had some conversations, and he sent it to the trust. Not really with any position open or available, but I was able to get in and just talk to them, and then a position kind of presented itself. And by February of 2020, I was hired in my current role. And so, yeah, staying connected with your professors is something that I highly, highly recommend. And also, one quick note on the Capstone projects. I've now, at NHT, I've now had 4 capstone groups. And we at NHT will be hiring soon in our policy department, which is a big deal because before me, the last person that got hired in the policy team was like 7 years ago. And so when those openings come up, the first people that I'll be looking at are those capstone students.
Love it. Teaching again in the spring, Raymond. I'll be in touch. Anyone else? Kevin?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think the point that I would add here is at least at the graduate level, every single professor I had understood why we were there, and it was to get a job, and they were very helpful in that endeavor, serving as references, opening doors for us at organizations. I think to the folks who are listening now, you may have experience with this. One of the biggest, it's really helpful when you're looking for a job to have a foot in the door, right? And professors are willing to do that for you here. Your fellow students are willing to do that for you here. And it makes a world of difference having those folks who understand that's what you're here for, and they're going to help you do that.
Yeah, I would. Sorry. I would say all the group projects, honestly, like every single policy class like had a group project at some point. Some of them were like major, they were like capstone level, and some were like the 24-hour policy assignment, where you have you go into class one day. Dr. Liffel, to your point, a little bit, but also like reflecting back on it, they were very, very helpful, and they really helped launch my career and stuff. But I think that like group work is like something that you will need like in your career, like especially early on. Like I'm entry level. I work with I work at a very small nonprofit, and I'm like the lowest person on the totem pole. So like I'm constantly working with other people and getting their feedback, and having that experience from policy classes of like, how do you navigate those discussions? Like, how do you work with people who have different working styles? Like, what does it mean to like be a manager of a project? What does it mean to like coordinate a project? Like those things are like kind of like, they're nebulous and they're hard to grasp, but like almost every single policy class had one of those projects. So like, I really got the practice, and like, I am so grateful for it. Like, I don't know what I would do now if I didn't have that practice, for real.
All right. Thank you, Serena. Let's build on that. I think what you talked about there are some transferable skills that were built in the classroom and that are applicable in a variety of different professional settings. What other ways did your degree assist you with your ability to do your current job? So it could be specific content knowledge. It could be transferable abilities. It can be quantitative. I mean, there's a number of different ways you could take that. And I think it'd be very helpful to prospective students to hear how you applied what you learned in the classroom, and sort of a backpack to briefcase sort of thing.
I can start on that question. So I think one of the ways that the public policy degree prepared me for my job is the ability to look at a problem through many different lenses. Every single class, you're going to be required to, think outside the box, think creatively, think innovatively, but also consider, perspectives that might not be yours, to look at it from another dimension. In my job, we work with federal agencies to solve some really complex management challenges. And that we're also, I will say, we're also independent and nonpartisan. So, that truly does require you to look at a problem through so many different angles. Federal agencies, they are, bound to these authorities given to them by Congress. But sometimes, agencies need to be a little creative in how they work within those constructs, within those boundaries. So that's, how we help them. We look at their problems and, find solutions. So I've really appreciated how I got that practice in all of the classes in the degree program.
Thanks, Elise. Others?
I'll quickly add one, which is like super literal, but I think that the writing skills that I built in the School of Health Policy and before that in my undergraduate degree have been really helpful. I think specifically, you're probably never really going to know how to write for your specific job, because it's really going to be different job to job, and whatever you're writing, the objective is just going to be different, and the way to do it is going to be different. But I think some of those core skills are really hard to learn when you're on the go in a work setting. And so having foundational writing skills was really important for me for my job, and something that I think made the transition into the work world a little bit easier, because I was able to build those in school, and I was able to kind of experiment and write a lot of different types of documents, write for different audiences, and kind of just learn a lot of those basic skills of how to write for different purposes and how to write for a different audience. And I think for the most part, that's a skill that will probably take you a really long way, and you will probably end up using at some point. And in the classroom, I feel like you can experiment more with just any skills and with learning if the purpose is to learn. Sometimes in the work world, it can feel like you don't really have as much time to experiment. So definitely take advantage of that, I guess, in general and specifically for writing.
Others?
I will jump on that writing piece and just, really drive home that, like the 48-hour assignment that like Serena talked about, where we had to do research and write this memo and, submit it, seemed like such a BS assignment. I was like, this is dumb. And then in my work, I'm like, oh, I have these, I have to respond to something sometimes in less than 48 hours, or, I have to, at one class I had to deliver testimony, and we did a, kind of a pseudo live testimony setup, and a mock testimony, event. And then like within the first few weeks of my job, I'm like testifying in real time in Annapolis, and have done so like many times now. So there are definitely a number of applicable skills that you can learn. I will say that I left SPP feeling pretty confident as a writer. And then for the first year or so, everything that I wrote, I would give to my colleagues, and like it would come back like multicolored, like it looked like a rainbow of like edits. But it was, you know, there are still skills that I brought to that still helped me even then. So there are a number, the data piece also, I hate the data. I'm so glad I don't have to do it. I can ask someone else to do it. If I couldn't, I would be, that'd be really difficult for me, but the data piece also is really huge.
Yeah, I'm gonna dive in there because I agree. I think the that data piece, even though I don't do it now, I still use those writing skills we learned in grad school. I do appreciate though having to take stats courses, having to take program evaluation, having to be able to read and understand research, because while I couldn't run Stata anymore or whatever those programs were, I know how to read it, which is really important. So when research comes across my desk, I can understand what they're talking about and where the flaws in the research are and those types of things. And there are plenty of other folks who I went to grad school with who focused on that, and they create the research now, right? That is another path. But even if you don't go that way, you still get that foundation that you need to be able to understand it at the level that you'll need in pretty much any job.
Thank you, guys. Well, we have time. I want to ask, we have two folks who went out into the field after their undergraduate time. We have two folks that did a BA MPP, which is the 5-year program. And then we have two folks that got the 2-year master's degree. Could you talk a little bit about the benefits of the path you chose, why you chose it, depending on which path it is?
I can speak to the path that I chose. So I'm one of the ones who went right into the workforce after my 4 years at Maryland. And I think the reason why is that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. What's great about the public policy degree is that you get exposure to so many different aspects of policy, whether it be social policy, immigration policy, housing policy, space policy, you name it. You know, there's probably a class that matches your interests. I liked a whole bunch of them. So I didn't necessarily, know, do I want to specialize in a certain area of policy in a, master's degree? I also had an interest in, kind of the program evaluation management aspect of government. And, that's maybe more aligned with a degree in public administration. It was a big question, which degree I wanted to seek. So for me, I thought it was best to go into the workforce and, spend a couple of years, figure it out. I now have my GRE book, so I'll start to study and maybe take that test and figure out what grad program is in my future. But I really enjoy being in the workforce now, getting some skills in a real office setting or work from home setting at this point. But it's been a path that has worked out well for me.
And I'll go on the end of that, Elise, because I did kind of the opposite. I went straight through. So I did my bachelor's of arts at UMBC in political science, and I just went straight into grad school at University of Maryland. And I think a lot of people ask me if you were to do it again, would you go into the workforce or would you, stay the course? And I think I still do not know, right? But what I always tell people is that regardless of what your path is, it all works out. So I think while I was in the program, I did notice that the students who, you know, went into the workplace, like they, you know, were able to like work their connections a little bit better. And so by the time like May or whatever, they had already had jobs and that sort of thing where I was still looking. But at the end of the day, like I got a job. So, and I was able to, you know, just like build my connections, you know, at the job and build a network and get the skills that I need. And I guess like I never felt bound to like one type of policy. So I feel like I've had, I graduated in 2015 and I feel like I've had like 4 careers already, because I've done like, you know, like interning in the state house, you know, community organizing, state level policy, federal level policy. And I never felt like constrained to stick to one path, I would say. Like there was always opportunities through fellowships and you know, just like through like repurposing what I've done at like another job to move into a career or pathway that I felt was better for whatever season that I was in. So I would say that like if I always also had a lot of anxiety about like do I, you know, take some time or do I go straight in? And if, you know, if that's you, like take the anxiety away as much as you can, because at the end of the day, like it'll work out, like things will fall in place regardless of whatever path you take.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly jump off that since I also did the BA MPP program, and I really do, I agree with a lot of that. And I think that for me, I chose to do the BA MPP program because I felt like at the end of my 4 years, I was a government politics major, and I felt like I needed a little bit more direction or time to kind of figure out what I actually wanted to do after. And I mean, I still don't really know, but I knew enough to take the one step after college. And I think it really, I think the experience is what you make of it. So like any experience, there are a ton of opportunities presented to you, and you really have to take advantage of all of them. And I think that maybe in hindsight, with hindsight being 2020, if I would have gotten into the workforce and then gotten my master's, perhaps I would have had the foresight to make more of the opportunities that were presented to me. But coming straight out of undergrad, there were some things that either were maybe too overwhelming for me personally, or I was just really in undergrad, sometimes you're really in that like class mindset. And I think I was still a little bit in that mindset. So looking back, I think I definitely should have taken more, I should have gone to all like the networking events or all the speaker events, actually spoken to all the alumni who came and who were talking about, go to events like this pretty much, which I probably went to some of them, but I definitely didn't talk to anybody because I was too scared to do that. So that would be my advice, is that I think that I think I specifically can get kind of overwhelmed with situations like that. But I think that if you do, I think with undergrad, I think with grad school, I think with the combined program, you really have to say yes to all the opportunities. If you're invited to something and you don't have anything else on your schedule, just go. You don't have to talk to anyone really. You don't need to go in with the pressure to be like, I need to get a job out of this. I mean, I think you just have to go and feel it out. And at least then you know that is like one thing you can do. You can go to one networking event, maybe at the next one, you can actually talk to someone, and maybe at the one after that, you can get someone's business card. It doesn't all have to happen in one night. So I think that, I don't know if that actually answered any question, but that would be advice that I would give to make the most of your experience.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off what Anjali was saying, because I was also BA MPP. So I came into Maryland a sociology major, and I was very unhappy with that. No shade to sociology, but I just wanted something that was more hands-on. So I went to the first look fair, like literally like 2 weeks after school started, I went to the SPP table. They were like, we have a new major. And I was like, sign me up. Literally signed up like 3 days later. And I just kind of stuck with public policy from then on. Like, I think that the undergraduate experience of being public policy just made me want to do an extra year of it, like, which was really nice. Like, I had some of the same professors in both undergrad and grad school. I got to kind of like dig deeper into like the faculty connections, the alumni connections, in SPP. Like, being in SPP for like basically 5 years was like so great, because like I got to be part of the school, like really part of the community, and like part of, you know, like I was on the Dean Student Advisory Council. Like, I got to like help shape the community in the school. And for me, that was really important, like as a person looking to like make change in the world, like being able to do that in the school, and then like kind of take some of those transferable skills into, you know, the future and beyond, which sounds scary to say, but like, like, you know, I think most of us on this call are like here because we want to change the world and we want to make the world a better place. And like SUT kind of gave me the foundation for that. So I was really happy with my BA PP experience. Like, I loved it a lot. It was also super fun to be a grad student, to be an undergrad in grad classes, because I was often the youngest person there. And it just made me seem so mature and so cool and so smart. I was like, I'm like 23. Like, I don't really know who accepted me into this program. Like, it was a lot of fun. That was nice too.
Those are all fantastic answers. Thank you, everybody. We've got about 6 or 7 minutes before we're going to switch to small groups, and all of the controls on my Zoom have disappeared. So Dr. Lowfield's in charge of the breakout room. So if you can still hear me, I'm going to continue with the screen that I've got here, even though I have no.
Yeah,
control.
you're good.
I think one final question that I might like to have for the good of the large group is sort of a free-form one, in that if there's one key takeaway that each of you would like to leave with the prospective students here today, what would that be? And it could be something that we've discussed so far. It could be something that we haven't discussed yet, but it might be something looking back on how you made your decision. You might do the same or do differently. I mean, take it any direction you want. I'd just love for a pearl of wisdom to be left by each of you for the folks that are in attendance this evening. How's that for a loaded question?
I can answer that one, because there's a clear answer from me. I used to say networking, but we've talked about that, and like that's an obvious one. But one of the things that I took away, and this was pretty late in my SPP journey, but it was something that Dr. Littlefield had told me, which was if the opportunity that you are seeking or that is in front of you doesn't scare you, then it's probably not the right opportunity for you. And so that was something that I think about regularly, and it is what empowered me to really pursue the position that I ultimately got at the National Housing Trust, because it was super intimidating, and all of my colleagues are like grad level Ivy League, you know, folks, and then there's like me, the bachelor's degree student, and that was terrifying. But there have been a number of scenarios that have come up in my work, being able to present to large, you know, bodies of individuals, presenting to Department of Energy, presenting to, you know, HUD, and also talking about a number of topics with professionals, specifically racial equity, which is something I do a lot, which is also very scary, but something that through SPP I like felt empowered to do, and it's also what has led me to about 6 months ago, a little over 6 months ago, I declared my candidacy for Prince George's County Council, the District 2 seat, and that election is in June this coming year. And I mean, talk about like a terrifying thing, but it felt right. And so do the things that scare you, because if you do the things that are comfortable, there's no growth in that.
Great advice.
I want to build off that. When you're a student, people react to you differently. Like there's something really different, from being a student, like you're like, okay, I don't know how to reach out to this person, but like just send the email. Like if you say like I'm a student, and especially like I'm a public policy student from the University of Maryland, like you will get replies back. Like people will be eager to meet with you. Like, yeah, like shoot your shot, like just go for it. Like when you're not in school anymore, people are like, why would I meet with this person? But like students are like people love meeting with students and young people. Like it is like invigorating and like so fun for like lots of people. Like I was like a student on like a panel with like tons of like important people, and they were like, oh, like this was the highlight of my day talking to you. And I was like, okay, I don't think that's true. But I think that that kind of sentiment applies. Like people love hearing from young people, so like just reach out. Like you never know what's going to happen, but like you have to reach out, because like the only thing they can say, there are two answers, yes or no, and like no isn't that bad, yes is great. So just like shoot your shot.
And I would say that was really great. I would say like create your own opportunities. I think that's kind of been echoed here. But like I definitely shot my shot a lot. And I'm sure Professor Christopher Foreman, particularly at him, he was probably like, oh my gosh, this girl is so annoying. But I very boldly asked him to do an independent study with me. I wanted to focus on criminal justice, particularly on like drug policy, because that's something that I wanted to do long term. And so I just asked him, just on a whim, I was like, will you do this with me? And it worked out. A little different than I envisioned it, but it worked out. Me and some of my other classmates, we were very upset about what was going on with everything that was going on Ferguson with Mike Brown, and all the like police brutality that was happening in the nation. So we banded together and we created a forum called Policy Matters. And the dean came and he stayed. I think he stayed the whole time, or if not, like he stayed like almost the whole time. But really creating my own opportunities. Even though I was doing an independent study and a capstone at the same time, I actually use like the research that I did on my independent study as a work product that I could shop around when I was going on interviews and that sort of thing. So like there's even like with going to different classes in different departments, which is something that I didn't know that I had the ability to do. So I took like a survey making class, took a criminal justice class as well, and really like got what I needed out of the degree. So create your own.
So I would say the question about like general guidance about University of Maryland was what came to mind. And I think it's been a theme of what I've talked about throughout is you don't have to know exactly what you want to do before you get started, right? To figure things out while you're in school, talking to very interesting, smart people, both professors and your fellow students. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities within the school to go different directions once you're already at the school. So that's one. Two, I just wanted to respond to what people were saying about reaching out. My ex-professors, now friends, have hooked me up with lots of students over the years to reach out to me. And Serena, it's not, they're not just like buttering you up. It is really nice to talk to current students. That is honestly a really good thing. So yeah, definitely do that. And the final thing I would say is, we talk a lot about networking. This is just more like general advice. Networking is really important. So like making connections with people, but that is what I want to emphasize. Networking should not be about getting a job. Networking should be about building relationships or building friendships. When folks come and talk to you about and it's so clear they're asking for a job right now or something. Like it's not going to make a real relationship, and it's not going to really go anywhere. But like asking like genuine questions about your work and having follow-up conversations, like that's networking, because you're really building a relationship with somebody. So when you think of networking, it's not just like a one-off thing. It's you want to become friends with that person, and that's legitimate. That's real.
Awesome.
My advice would be prepared to say what's next after you maybe mess up, after you fail. Look ahead, because chances are, if something maybe didn't go your way, something even better is around the corner. For me, that experience happened, I want to say it was between my freshman and sophomore year, one of those semesters. I thought I wanted to be a business major on top of government and politics. At the time, I don't think I could have given you an answer more than, oh, it kind of makes sense. Accounting 1, I probably got the worst grade of my life. So I was like, totally lost at that point. It's like, oh, I'm not going to do well in business, but maybe I should stick with it. But, at the time, I was like, I should probably open myself up to other opportunities. What else can I do? Where else can I apply my strengths?
Mm-hmm.
To the School of Public Policy, because there was still that numbers element that I enjoyed. Maybe accounting 1 wasn't my biggest strength, but statistics was. And without public policy, I wouldn't have found my close group of friends, and I wouldn't have found these faculty members that were so supportive during my time and after. So if you get knocked down, like getting a bad grade in accounting 1, figure out what's next. Maybe it happened for a reason. So.
Awesome. I think we saved the most sage advice for the very end. Those are all wonderful, wonderful answers. So thank you all for that. Jen,
I don't think Anjali went. Did you?
Anjali, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to kind of double down what I said earlier about just say yes to everything, well, within reason. And just, as a student, you probably have a lot of questions about everything, and really just ask them. So ask all your questions, say yes to all opportunities, listen to what everyone's saying, even if it's not really something that's in your lane. It might connect later. You might be more interested in that, and take any class that you want, especially in undergrad, because you have to take a lot of like general education classes and stuff. Take whatever classes that interest you, even if you don't think it's like on your specific path, because really college is one of the only times when you can do that so easily, and you can learn about so many different topics that you might really never have thought about. So that's my quick few cents.
Related to all this great advice is, let's go into breakout rooms and y'all get to talk to these people one-on-one and get to know them and become friends with them and learn from them, because that's what we're doing here.